welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Today's topic is likely to start a lot of controversy, and for that reason it's something that I've avoided for, a long time, up until this point. But it's important to discuss, especially if you're talking about Kemetic faith, Kemetic Reconstructionism. Tamara and Wiccans obviously don't have as much of an issue with this, but if you're interested in the Kemetic flavor, the discussion inevitably comes up about a Nisut. What is a Nisut, and do we need one? First of all, to explain the term, Nisut, or Nisu without the T, scholars often disagree over whether the T in sign at the end of the name was meant to be pronounced or not. But either way, the word means king. It is the same meaning as the word pharaoh. Now, there are certain Kemetic groups that do not like to use the word pharaoh because they say that's a non-native term. But the thing is, pharaoh comes from Hebrew, and the Hebrews were borrowing an Egyptian word, pera'ah, which means great house. It's somebody explained it in one of my books as sort of like you would refer to, the monarch of England by saying Buckingham Palace. In the Egyptians' case, they would say great house, Perah. And this word also has found its way into Arabic, because the Arabic word for pharaoh is Firon. So very, very similar. Really, all that happened was the P sound softened to an F, and it's the same word which started being used in the New Kingdom, and it's carried on to today. So if you ask me, it's okay to say the word pharaoh. Another term that you'll see used, referring to people with titles like that, is hem or hemet. Hemet is the feminine form of hem. And there are three contexts that you'll hear that you'll see that word in ancient Egyptian language. The general meaning of the word is person, and a common way that you'll see it is in the term for a priest, a hemnetcher or hemet netcher, and it's a type of servant. Think of it as I'll have my people talk to your people. They're attached to you and they do things for you. That describes what a priest or priestess would do. They are connected to a particular deity and they do things for that deity. So that's their people. The second context is as a wife. A wife is a hemet, and Nisut hemet weret is the great royal wife, the queen. It's written with a different symbol than the other form of hem. By the way, I'm going to stop now and say you really, really need to get How to Read Egyptian Hieroglyphs, by Mark Collier and Bill Manley. This book explains everything that I just said, and goes on to explain the next, the third context. It's very easy to understand, but if you read this one and it's a little tough to grasp, they just came out with another book, Egyptian Hieroglyphs for Complete Beginners. And I picked this up and it explains some things that I missed in the first book. So really, really wonderful stuff by Bill Manley. If you want to learn anything about the Egyptian language, then get these books. They're really worth it. And they explain everything that I'm telling you here about what does Nisut mean, and then what does hem mean. It can be a priest, it can be someone's wife, or it can be a way of talking indirectly about the king. And it also has been used the same way to talk about a deity. Because you have, for example, this is from the Myth of Destruction of Mankind, and this is talking about Ra, and he says to Hathor, and the majesty of this god said, Jedin hem en necherpen, literally, the words said by the person of this deity. And again, it's the person. It's a deferential way of saying, the king, or the king of the gods in the case of Ra, and that's something that we would usually translate today as his, or in the case of Hemet, her majesty. So if you're not talking about someone who's a wife or a priest or priestess, you say Hem or Hemet. You're saying his or her majesty in Egyptian. Something to consider. Another concept, which you'll see discussed, in forums on different pages, is talking about the royal Ka, or the kingly Ka, as it's commonly said. Again, if you want to talk about the Ba and the Ka, those are parts of your person, part of your soul, and I explain a little bit of that in Following the Sun. But Ka is still kind of debated even among scholars. What all does it mean? Because it's not a very simple concept. But we do know that there was a special variant of the Ka that was associated with royalty. And it's talked about in an article from Journal of Near Eastern Studies, which, if you have access to a university library, which I had to do, I had to go to my local university and go to their library, and through their internet connection you can access scholarly journals that if you were just on your home computer you'd have to pay for per article in order to get, but you can download them as PDFs for free from the university. So go to the Journal of Near Eastern Studies, Volume 44, Number 4. So this was published in October 1985, and it's called Luxor Temple and the Cult of the Royal Ka, and by Lanny Bell. It's talking primarily about how the Opet Festival was celebrated in Luxor Temple and how that had to do with the kingly Ka, the royal Ka, because the Opet Festival was a way of recharging and reaffirming the kingly Ka. So what is it? Well, according to what he says here, the concept of the Ka in Egyptian religion is a complicated one, but it may be described for the moment as the divine aspect of the king, linking him with both the gods and all his royal predecessors. In the theory of Egyptian kingship, the king derives his legitimacy primarily from his association with two gods, Horus, the son of Isis, and the sun god as creator. Hence, two names in his five-fold titulary, the 5 names that a pharaoh takes on, represent him as the earthly incarnation of Horus and as successor to Ra. So, you can think of the Ka, and as you said, the meaning of it is, still some, we're trying to hammer out the finer points of what is the Ka, just from a scholarly standpoint. But the royal Ka, the Ka of the king, comes from the creator god himself. And that's what makes the person who is acting as king able to rule as both the king and the son, or in rare instances the daughter, of God. Now, another things that scholars are trying to untangle from the written records that we have left from the ancient Egyptians is whether or not kings were, across the board, considered to be gods, or demigods in life. But there's a preponderance of evidence that says yes, they were. And, or certainly that, royal Ka, that was, a divine force. And something to consider. We have from the Middle Kingdom hymns, religious hymns that were addressed to the crown and to the king himself. In one case to King Senusret. Interestingly enough, if you dig around online, there is a hymn to the Nisut that is written by and addressed to the Nisut in a particular group. Now, I am not picking on just the House of Necher. They have a Nisut who is probably the best known on the internet, but there's several other ones out there. If you've heard of the group Nuhadi Amnacharu, which was started about 2001, they have a Nisut. And there's another Kemetic group that had Pharaoh Berry, I believe is who it was. They had a Pharaoh or Nisut. And then if you're talking about the Asara Set Society, the person who founded that has taken on kingly titles and even went to Africa to another country and got recognition from that particular country. I'm not going to talk about them very much because that's in more the Afrocentric community. That's they would better be able to explain that than me. So I'm going to defer that to them. But you still have 3 other Nisuts. Which one has the kingly ka? Would the real Slim Shady please stand up? So that's something to consider if you're if we're discussing do we need a Nisut? Well, evidently some people thought we needed it once so much that there's now several of them. I would really love for viewers from the United Kingdom to sound off on this topic because you have a sovereign, Queen Elizabeth II, and that's a different perspective than we have here in America. That's another thing that's rather interesting if you think about it. The groups that are Kemetic that have Nisuts are all in America. There isn't one in England that has one. So, could that have anything to do with it? Please give us your thoughts. My viewpoint on the subject is very much informed by the fact that I'm an American and, learned about the Enlightenment ideas that played into the American Revolution, then that all men are created equal, meaning that there's not one person who was singled out by Providence, as the writers of the Declaration of Independence put it, to be over anyone else. So we're all unique, we're all special, but no particular one of us has been singled out by God or by Ra. And another interesting thing to consider, there were Britons who wrote about this idea too. There was one in particular, Lord Acton, who wrote that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's my 2 cents on the idea of a Nisut in the present day. Hopefully, whether you agree with what I have to say or not, the explanation of the terms themselves will give you a little bit of a better understanding of the historical background of that concept so that you can consider how that would factor into your own practice, be it Egyptian pagan or Kemetic. So, for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon wishing you Senepti.